Hey guys, so I want to bring you this budget lightning arrow Deadeye, some extremely efficient ways to scale this character, especially on a non-crit version, just to show you what this character can do on such a low budget. So I made this character tonight because I keep getting questions, hey, how do I scale my damage? How do I build my character? So yeah, I want to go over all of that in this video. This is a 25 to like 27 divine character. I'll have the breakdown in a second. But as you can see, this is a tier 16 map with Delirium, Breach, and it's absolutely zero issue in terms of defense and damage, and you still get those insane held pops as you just saw right there. So yeah, let's go over the full character and all that. I want to show you two boss clips here. This is the Boston setup, which I'll go over in a second as well, but this setup has more damage for Boston, but it's a little bit worse for map clear. And then there's another setup that's better for mapping, but worse for bosses, just to give you the two options. But as you can see, doing Ubers is absolutely zero issue, but I did change my tree for this skill. If you do want to pause the video to see what's changed, I'll go over that in a second as well though. So this is a second boss kill, and this is not the Boston setup, just to show you the damage difference and how much more damage you can get by changing to the Boston setup. Although I did get a tad bit unlucky in this clip because he did the AoE first, which you have to dodge. But yeah, if you do the Boston setup, it's way more Boston damage if that's something you want to do. So I thought I would mention that just to compare the two clips real quick. But yeah, this boss kill does take quite a bit longer, but yeah, still dies, no issue whatsoever. All right, so this is the setup of the character. Let's go over everything. First things first is the notes. So I wrote down everything I brought, all the prices. 249% Widowhail with 3 sockets was 10 exalts for me, and then 54x for the 3 elemental damage soul cores, which is what we're using here. Very, very strong. The Widowhail setup is extremely cheap and extremely strong and very, very underused right now. Just to show you on trading real quick. As you can see, yeah, I got mine for 10x, I guess it was 5x cheaper or whatever, but yeah, these are extremely cheap, 249% Widowhails with 3 sockets. You don't need 249%, you can get 248% as well, it doesn't really matter, and 248% is like just as cheap. All you need, which I'll explain in a second, is certain Quiver breakpoints, which I'll explain in this video, of course, but yeah, very, very cheap bow, and it's extremely effective. So if you want to pause the video and see the breakdown for yourself, essentially the most expensive piece was the Against the Darkness, which was 7 divines, and I used 1 divine to divine it. Did get kind of lucky here, I got 4% my first divine, but hey, that's what it is. And yeah, Quiver was 3 divines, you can get way better Quiver than mine. The other 2 expensive pieces was the Quiver Jewel, so I got a nice 9% Jewel Corrupt Quiver for 50 exalts. It's probably 50 exalts because it was corrupted. Then I had to buy a low percent Quiver Jewel and then divine it once for 12% to give me this Quiver breakpoint, which once again I'll go over in a second. And then all the non-Quiver jewels were pretty cheap. Honestly, jewels right now are extremely cheap, and some of these are extremely good, like 4 property jewels. These are only like 40 to 50 exalts each. Very, very high value. And one thing to note, which I will show in a second, is my tooltip. But this increased damage with hits against rare unique enemies is not reflected on your tooltip, and all of my jewels have these, and this adds up to a lot of extra damage. So yeah, these are extremely strong. Not very valued for some reason, probably because they reflect tooltip, but yeah, they're very, very good because they give you a lot of damage. 2 socket Azure Disdain, 40x, chest 2D, and then yeah, 1D, 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 right? So let's go to the gear real quick. If you want to see the price for yourself, but yeah, total was like 25 divines and then like extra 1 divine for gems, like maybe like 26 or 27 divines. And then optional 100 exalts for Thieves Torment for Uber bosses. This is only for Ubers. You don't want to use Thieves Torment for mapping. So yeah, this is the Widowhail setup. And very important when doing Widowhail, you want an extremely good Quiver. So I will go over the stats you want in a Quiver here, but this is just essentially a like 5 mod Quiver. I don't care for the crit at all here. Azure Sustain, extremely cheap for how effective it is. It gives me half my energy shield, and this helmet, without the 2 sockets, it's like 1 exalt. With the 2 sockets, I got for 40x, but still really good. This chest, once again, I got for like 1 or 2 divines. I think it was 2 divines, just intelligence and resist. High evasion and energy shield. You can definitely get a way better chest if you want to invest more and more, right? Amulet, you only need 30 spirit on the amulet. I just got this one because it just, you know, what it had 43 spirit. But yeah, intelligence and resist, this is a really common trend. You want intelligence everywhere to really scale this build. Intelligence and amulet, chest, both rings, even boots. Of course, hand and wisdom action have intelligence. Can't get on belt, but yeah, intelligence everywhere you can, and even a full skill tree, all of our attribute nodes is intelligence. So what is this? So essentially how the setup works is that Widowhail scales your Quiver, and our Quiver has a ton of increased damage of bow skills, increased projectile speed, right? Increased projectile speed is increased damage because of feathered fletching. and then also plus levels. So that +2 goes all the way up to like +9. As you can see here, our skill is currently level 29. Oh yeah, so to note, this was all done on a 5-link. The clips you saw were all on 5 links. Now, only cheating a little bit here because this is a level 20 light arrow and not level 19. Level 19 would be the budget option. I just didn't feel like buying a light arrow, to be honest. Level 20, it's only 5% more damage than level 19. Not a big deal, whatever. But yeah, these were 5 links. They weren't even 6 links in the clips. Also, same thing with heralds. Everything is 5 linked. Yeah, like I was saying, you get a ton of increased damage from your Quiver with the Widowhail combo. So to really scale your damage, you need to get a lot of flat. Every single piece of flat damage gives you a ton of damage in this setup. We can see from this ring right here, it has double flat, although the cold's not that much, and it has intelligence, which is more flat because of Hand of Wisdom. If I take this ring off, we lose 11k DPS. So yeah, flat is a ton of damage. This one ring is giving me roughly 18% more damage. That's how much flat matters in this build. And also I do have empty sockets here because I didn't want to fill up my gear, but essentially you would put a rarity in these or chaos res. This is my resist if you want to see it, and my stats. We're overcapped on all the resist, and we have 54% chaos resist. If you want more chaos resist, you can also put chaos soul cores in here or rarity. Rarity is not that much on this character. I think it's only like, yeah, 16% from helmet, but there are options to upgrade here. Obviously on a budget build, you can't really focus that much on rarity, and that's fine. But yeah, and then with Tailwind up, we have 73% evasion, which is quite nice. Roughly 2.5k energy shield and 1.9k life. Now my character is level 98, but I didn't use 4 skill points to try to emulate a level 94 character. I feel like a level 94 character is pretty fair. That's probably where, roughly most people are at, right? Yeah, besides that, I got this really like useless belt, it was like 50 exalts, but you do want like a headhunter or an ingenuity eventually. This is extremely cheap, just get a regular route belt, budget build, so I went the cheapest route everywhere as possible. I will say, out of all my pieces, the luckiest pieces probably the boots. I got these for 1 divine. They were listed for like 30 minutes. They're probably worth more than 1 divine, so I did get lucky here. But like, you don't need 30% moon speed. Obviously 25%, even 20% is fine. And then my quiver I got for 3 divines, which I think this is a quite good quiver for 3 divines. I think it's more like 5 or 6. But still, you get good deals somewhere and bad deals elsewhere. I made this character as fast as possible. I made it in about an hour just to try to get this video out to help you guys who are struggling, who don't know how to scale your character. So let's go to the passive tree and also the boss swap version as well if you want to do that. But yeah, this is pretty much just the tank version on Mobalytics. There's no real difference here. I think the only difference here is I take Common Calamity over pressure points. Essentially the deal here is that if you need help freezing, then take pressure points. If you don't need help freezing, then take Common Calamity. As you saw in the previous clip, I was freezing breaches no issue, so I didn't feel like I needed this and I just took more damage instead. But yeah, besides that, it's the exact 1-to-1 tree on my Mobalytics guide. And like I said, this is not even optimal for bosses, but it's still extremely good on this budget setup. Like, we're taking these AoE nodes, which do nothing. We're taking like way over pen for bosses. You don't need this much pen for bosses whatsoever, but it is good for mapping. We anointed Doomslayer, once again, does nothing for bosses. And as you can see, this setup is extremely effective. Our hold device is 3.4 meters, which is very, very nice clear speed. But like I said, this is all in the Mobalytics guide, and I'll have Widowhail here. But obviously you should use it when it's this cheap. It's extremely effective and it's only as good as your quiver, so do keep that in mind. But everything is written down here for you to check out. It's just on the standard line arrow Deadeye guide, and then you just go to tank setup, and that's what I played exactly in this video essentially. Also have all the 5-link and 6-link priorities and the quality priorities, gem swapping. So like for example, for bossing, you do want to swap in martial tempo and primal armaments. Or Lantern Rod. Ideally, you have a 6-link Lantern Rod, and then you can use close combat. So yeah, that's what you would do for bosses. For Ubers, you don't have to do it for mapping. That's just for Ubers to get the maximum amount of damage, as it is a big increase, as you could see. And one last note on the passive skill tree for the boss setup. Essentially, all you would do if you want to focus more on bosses and less on mapping is you spec out of all these nodes right here, because you don't need this much pen for the boss whatsoever. Then you take the Giant Slayer, and you also come over here and take Sharp Sight. This just gives you way more damage for bossing. So yeah, if you do want more bossing damage, do that setup. I showed it in the beginning clip of the video, but that's all. This setup is a little bit better for mapping because extra pen helps for the resist maps, and the freeze buildup also helps for freezing monsters, which you don't really need versus bossing. So to wrap the video up, let's go over the final thoughts and notes. Yeah, essentially, our single target is vastly gained by using a projectile speed quiver with Widowhail. And the reason why this is bad for single target is that ball will hit more times the slower it goes, but since you scale projectile speed so hard with quiver effect and your projectile speed from your quiver, They go really fast, so you speed through, and they don't hit the liner rods for like more than 1 or 2 times. It's not a big deal. It does hurt your single target, but for mapping, it's no issue whatsoever. And you saw in the Boston clips, it really didn't matter. They still died rather fast, especially on this extremely budget setup. You know, Widowhail is just extremely strong combined with Hoa and flat damage. This build really only works because of Hoa. Without Hoa, this build just wouldn't work. You get a ton of flat from this. I'm currently at 358 intelligence, and you can definitely get way more than this, and 200 dexterity. But yeah, a ton of flat. Now flat is extremely good because of lantern rod from non-lucky crits. And like I said, flat damage is so strong because you have so much increased damage from your Quiver plus Widowhail. The tree, like I said, is not optimal for uber bosses. You don't need that much pen or AoE nodes, but like I said, even with that fact, we're still killing the bosses extremely fast. Like I said earlier, take pressure points on the skill tree over the herald nodes if you need help freezing. I did on this character, but maybe you do. The Quiver is extremely important with this setup, and you want at least 270% Quiver bonus from your jewels and Widowhail combined. This is because when you combine with Master Fletching, this will give you 350% Quiver bonus, and every 50% Quiver bonus is a breakpoint. The reason why is a +2 level of all projectile skills. 50% of 2 is 1, right? So every 50%, you get 1 more level on projectile skills, which is 5% more damage per a level. So yeah, I have a 249% Widowhail, and then I have 1 jewel right here, which is 9%, and then 1 jewel right here, which is 12%. This gives us that 270% breakpoint, because combined with this 80%, we get 350%. Now, if you want to scale this build further, you would want every single jewel to have like 14 or 15% Quiver bonus. This will give you a lot more damage and a lot more levels. Like I said, this is just a budget setup, so I didn't go for that. I went for these very cheap jewels. Yeah, the most expensive piece was the Against the Darkness. You could probably skip this on a lower budget. It's also not needed whatsoever for uber bosses. You don't need, to freeze the uber boss. I don't freeze them anyway. The minimum Quiver stats, so you always want to increase bow damage, projectile speed, +2 levels, and dexterity. Dexterity is very important actually, and it's usually a cheap stat, because that dexterity is essentially intelligence. The reason why is if you have dexterity in your Quiver, that means you can make all your small passives intelligence. Where if you don't have dexterity in Quiver, all these small passives will probably have to be dexterity because you won't have enough dexterity to use your skills, right? You need that minimum 205 dexterity for your level 20 light arrow. So do keep in mind, dexterity is very nice on Quiver, and you don't even need that much. The 5th best stat is attack speed, and the 6th best stat is flat damage. These two are pretty interchangeable. Like I said, this is like a 5 mod Quiver or a 6 mod if you got the implicit. You ideally do want attack speed roll, but if you can't afford it, it's not a big deal. The attack speed doesn't help all that much for breach clearing, but it is extremely strong for uber bosses. So either one on the implicit or the explicit. I got an implicit here. Just, get what you get, afford what you can, but you want these 4 mods all the time. Flat damage is also very good, and most Quivers do have this as well. So this one had 8 to 6 fizz damage. This can be fizz, cold, or land damage. It can be whatever, right? If you have Against the Darkness, you don't really need cold damage on gear. This will solve all your freeze issues for you. So yeah, like I said, this will solve all your freeze issues. If you don't have this, you definitely will need pressure points right here, and you will need a lot more flat cold on your gear. This was the most expensive piece out of this build, but it's very good. It makes your breaches a lot more smooth because you're constantly freezing everything, and it's really worth it. So yeah, you don't need more than 30 spirit on your amulet. I just got extra here because essentially what you do at 120 spirit, you turn off your ghost stance, turn off your grim feast, and turn your cast on shock, and that's it. Right, and then for mapping, you take off cast for shock and put on ghost stance and grim feast, which is only 120 spirit. So you don't need that much spirit to play this build, but if you do have extra spirit, I would highly recommend you use cannibalism just for some life on kill, and it does help with the split damage from a 0 sustain. Now to quickly go over the last part of this video is upgrades and what to do next. So the first immediate upgrade I'll try to get is a +1 arrow Widowhail. Because 2 arrows doesn't really feel that great. It is okay because heralds do carry, but 3 arrows feels a lot better in my opinion. So yeah, I would definitely try to get a +1 Widowhail, or even a 300% Widowhail if you want more damage. But these can cost anywhere from 10 to 20 divines, and keep in mind, you don't need a perfect percent. It's fine to get a 245% Widowhail with +1 arrow. You just need the extra percent from your jewels. Once again, keep in mind, you want at minimum 350% Quiver bonus, and of course, you can scale it more if you want. Eventually, a regular bow will beat Widowhail, but they'll probably be around that 40 to 50 divine range, and that's when it will start actually beating Widowhail. Even more expensive depending on how good your Quiver is. You can use Widowhail all the way up into Mirror to be honest, if you just keep upgrading your Quiver. But yeah, this is an issue that Path of Building will solve. It comes out in a few days. because you can easily see what weapon's going to beat what. Eventually, you also want an energy shield helmet. While a 0 sustain is great, it does lack stats, it doesn't have any resist, it does have rarity, which is nice, but that's it. It's just a very, very strong budget option, which is why I used it. It costs absolutely nothing, and it gives you a ton of energy shield. To be more exact, this helmet is the highest ES helmet in the game. Actually, it does beat every other ES helmet. There is some exceptions to that, but yeah, essentially, it's 30% max on life as energy shield, right? So at 1900 life, this is roughly 570 ES, then plus 58. So we're getting roughly 630 ES from this helmet, which is, yeah, it's more than any other ES helmet in the game, which is why it's very, very strong. But you would want to replace it eventually to get more resist and rarity, because then if you get resist on your helmet, you can replace your belt for something like Headhunter, or get more flat on your rings and less resist and use something like Ingenuity, right? And of course, after replacing your helmet, you should have the resist solved so you can get a Headhunter, which is extremely strong for breach. It will make your breach clears way faster. I do highly, highly recommend to get a Headhunter if you are doing breach. It is just way better than Ingenuity for, breach. If you're not doing breach, if you're doing Ubers or anything else, then sure, use Ingenuity. It'll be better for everything that isn't breach. Like I was saying earlier, it will be better to get more flat on rings over life or rarity. I think I did mess up here. I should have gotten another flat roll instead of life or rarity. I did not need a life whatsoever. My life's already pretty high. So yeah, instead of this life roll, get another flat damage, and it'll be a lot more damage. You can probably get like 10% more damage from each ring. So your tooltip right here, which is currently 66k, could probably be like 78k with 2 more flat rolls on your rings. So that would be a lot more damage. I think it is worth it over the health. Focus on getting rarity where you can. It's not mandatory. Focus on your damage first. You want to be full clear breaches. It doesn't matter how much rarity you have if you aren't full clear breaches. So get to the point where you're full clear breaches and then keep on adding more and more rarity, right? You do want to eventually like 150 to 200% rarity, roughly in that range. Even 100% rarity is completely fine. It doesn't take that much to get there. Like I said, this was a budget build, so I didn't want to buy very expensive rarity pieces, but it is something you should focus on eventually. And then of course, last tip is just eventually down the line, if you want to make a big upgrade, get a nice 50 to 100 Divine Quiver will vastly improve your damage. So a 6 mod Quiver on a primed base will give you a ton of damage. It would probably give me like 40 to 50% more damage if I got a proper Quiver. So yeah, that's how hard it does scale because you are Widowhail. Anyway, that's the whole video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. But this was the budget setup I wanted to make to help those guys who are struggling. I think Widowhail for this price is just extremely strong. You probably should be using it. Once again, a rare bow does eventually beat this, but for the price, this is like the king of budget. Anyway, that's about it.